Hello again everybody and welcome back to Fujit's Blitz with me, Fujit. Hello! Today we're going to be looking at this little beastie. This is the IS, or as it should really be called, the JS. It's actually named after Joseph Stalin, but it's called IS because the Cyrillic is a backward N and a C. So that actually, when you transliterate it, is ES. Basically, so that's why we call it an IS, because it does stand for Joseph Stalin. Another little pointer here, the KV series stands for Clemente Voroshilov, who was one of Stalin's defense minister. So they had a habit, these Soviets, of naming tanks after themselves. Anyway, I digress. We're going to look at this tank, the IS. It's a tier 7 heavy. It's found in the Soviet Tech Tree line. Now the reason we're looking at this one is because a lot of people seem to think that this is a really terrible tank, and I'll be honest, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. So that's why I'm looking into it, because I decided to drop down a few tiers, because you don't always want to see tier 10 now, do we? We want to see, on occasion, some tier 7s at least. Although a lot of people don't like tier 7, mainly because of the Smasher and the Annihilator. However, there are some little tricks and gems in tier 7 that we're going to look into. Not only that, I always think it's a good idea to drop down to these lower tiers to give those up-and-coming players at least something to find out on the internet to see how they can play the darn things. Anyway, without any further ado, let's have a look at the tank compare on this tank. I've hopped over into Blitz Stars and I have just highlighted here all the tier 7 Tech Tree Heavies. And as you can see, the IS comes in 3rd place. That's not too bad. It has a 51.19% win rate. That's not too bad either. It's played a lot, not as much as the Tiger 1, admittedly, but it is the 2nd most played tank in the tier. Tech Tree, that is. Tech Tree. I mean, obviously the Smash is probably the most played, followed by the Annihilator. This thing has 898 battles under its belt. It has an average damage per battle of 1020, which, when you compare it to the others, isn't great, to be honest with you. It struggles. This tank does struggle. But doesn't it struggle as much as that one below, all the way down towards the bottom, the IS-2? That is the Chinese version of the same tank, funnily enough. And I'm going to do a review on that one as well, because a lot of people do struggle in that one. So the IS isn't as bad as everybody makes out. It's pretty good, in fact. It's the top 3. Let's get an overview of the tank. As we can see here, it has 1,484 hit points. That's not too bad. It dishes out 400 damage on its high-end alpha with the top gun. That again is not too bad. Its rate of fire is terrible. 4.9 rounds a minute. I mean, that's just slow. Penetration's good though, 175 millimeters. The armor on average is 123 millimeters. Now that says here it's just above average, but we'll see that in Armor Inspector it's not that good at all. Speed for a very clunky heavy tank isn't that bad at all. 29 kilometers an hour. That's okay. That means it's just above average, almost topping the list, to be honest with you. So that's the overview. Let's jump into some more detailed stats. Looking therefore straight at the survivability, this is one of the main things that we all want to know. Hit points, as I said, 1,484. Now we start to look at the armor. On the front of the turret, it's 133 millimeters. That ain't a lot. Not really when you think about it. The hull, 155 millimeters frontally, although that is a little bit of a sort of misnomer. The sides of the turret are 86, the hull are 90, and the rear is 86 and 60. But when I show you the overview of the actual armor in Armor Inspector, you'll see that that is what Wargaming is saying is the average, by the way. The chance of a fire when the engine is hit is 12%. The view range, not bad for a big clunky heavy, 259.9. Now the thing is, I am running it with optics and all that sort of stuff, so that does increase it. Concealment, again, you have to remember, this is a big, tall, lumbering heavy. 37% while stationary, 30% while moving, and 7% after firing. That realistically isn't too bad, not for a heavy tank. The other thing we've got to remember before I start looking at the guns is that this tank comes with 3 guns, okay? It's got 2 tier 7s and a tier 8. Now, if you load the tier 8 gun, and I'm sorry, the Luma Kia didn't particularly pick out anything good in this one. If you pick the tier 8, which is what I've got loaded, you are going to have a lot of DPM, a lot of alpha damage, very low DPM, because the reload is just to die for. So you have to remember that. So the thing is, you don't need that tier 8 to get to the IS-3, okay? You just need that tier 7 to get to the IS-3. And it's up to you which gun you want to use. Do you want to use that tier 7, the top tier 7, before you get to the IS-3, which has a very good reload, pretty decent penetration, and, funnily enough, it actually does dish out pretty decent damage? Or do you want to load that derpy gun, which is going to really reduce your DPM and put you on an excessively long reload? That's your call. It's up to you. Now, I'm going to give you the overview for the tank with the derp gun, okay? Because that's just the way everybody likes derp. So this is the stats for the derpy gun. We have a damage per minute of 1,966, which, considering the tier, isn't that bad, to be honest with you. But we do have a reload time of 12.21 seconds. That is a long time, considering the tier that you're in. The thing is, you're going to be knocking out 400 on your standard ammunition, with the penetration on that ammunition being at 175 millimeters, which is pretty darn good. It jumps up to 217 millimeters on your APCR with 340 high-end alpha. Again, that's pretty darn good. The HG's not too bad either. 61 millimeters penetration with 500 being dished out. Your aim time, however, shoots up to a whopping 4.9 seconds. I mean, that is taking a long time, and that's with me running optics and everything like that. The other thing, your dispersion, you remember the reticle, the dispersion is where the shell travels within that reticle, jumps up to almost 0.4. That is huge. This tank with the derp gun is not a sniper, believe me. So that's the stats for the derp gun, but everybody wants the derp, so that's why I'm showing you the stats. So you're going to dish out a lot of high-end alpha, pretty decent DPM at 1,966, not gonna lie, but as we go back and we look at that comparison, this thing is not dishing out the damage per battle that realistically it should be doing. And that's because majority of people are running it with the derp gun and they're not connecting because of the dispersion, the aim time, etc, etc. The other thing you need to take account of is the gun depression on this tank. It's only 6 degrees going down. 25 degrees admittedly going upwards, which is pretty nice, but going down, it's only 6. So think about ridgeline fighting, think again. Going to take a bit of a closer look now at the ammunition. This is its armor piercing. I'm carrying 11 of them on my tank. And as you can see there, the penetration is not too bad, between 166 to 184, with the alpha damage anywhere between 300 and 500. That is pretty stonking, not gonna lie. Moving over to the premium ammunition, which is APCR, well, I'm taking 10 of those, and again, I've got a penetration of 206 to 228, with damage high-end alpha, but anywhere between 255 to 425. Again, that's not too shabby considering. Finally, we're looking at the HE, and I've only got 5 of those loaded, and you're going to get penetration anywhere between 58 to 64 millimeters, with damage anywhere between 375 to 625. That's straightforward damage. That doesn't account for any splash damage before anybody starts asking. If you get it wrong, if you mistime it, you are only going to do splash damage, which is going to be nowhere near these figures. It's going to be like 10, okay? So you need to remember that. Moving over to the mobility now, well, we have a top speed of 34 going forwards, 14 going backwards, with an average speed of 29 kilometers an hour. Not too bad, considering this is a big, clunky heavy, as I said. Power to weight ratio is not too bad either. It's pretty heavy at 48.32 tons, and it's got it's an okay turn rate. The turret turn is 30 degrees per second, whereas the hull is 40 degrees per second, and that's not bad at all. Terrain crossing ability on the road is 100%, on the ground is 79%, and in the water it gets a bit sluggish at 61%. But it is pretty good at putting that engine power into those tracks very nicely. And you will get up to that top speed of 29 average pretty quickly, to be honest with you. This thing is not slow. It feels slow, but it's not slow at all. So that's the consumables and the provisions that I'm running on this tank. It's pretty much standard stuff. It doesn't come with anything special. There's no special provisions or special consumables. So it's just the normal adrenaline, a first aid multi-repair restoration pack, and a track repair. And then I've just got the crew stuff to get my crew working a bit harder. Looking at my equipment loadout, well, again, it's pretty standard stuff. At the moment, I'm running this with a gun rammer rather than that calibrated shells. I think the penetration on this one's not too bad. I've then got the defense system, I've then got the improved optics, I've then got the gun laying device. It shows the wrong thing there. I've actually got the 4% increase to the armor. I've got the mobility. I haven't got the refined gun, no point. I've got the vertical stab, and then I've got the toolbox and everything else. Again, guys, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules to the equipment you want to use on your tank, okay? And it's up to you to pick and choose what you are comfortable with. That's what I'm comfortable with the IS at the moment. It kind of works for me. It may not work for you, however. Looking now at the armor profile of this tank, because as we saw in the overview, Wargaming give us the average millimeters, and this is what the tank actually looks like. I mean, this is a beautiful render from Blitz stars, and this is the armor profile itself. Now, the red areas, now the way this works, so the purple areas, for example, on the gun mantlet are very tough to pen. The blue area is the gun. It can't be damaged as such. Well, it can be damaged, but it can't be wrecked. We've got the tracks, which are dark purple, which you know can be wrecked. And then we've got this color-coded yellow all the way up to orange and red. Now, basically, if it's yellow, it means it's very thin. If it's red, it means it's pretty thick. And you can see here that we've got a multitude of various colors. On the back and on the sides, we really have more yellow than anything else. On the front, it's kind of orangey-ish red kind of thing. And we'll get into what all that means when we do a proper overview of the thickness of the armor on various things. But from this little profile here, you can see that the lower glacis plate and the ridge between the lower glacis plate and the upper glacis plate is actually thicker than the upper glacis plate. Then you've got that area around the driver's compartment, which is thicker again. And then you've got the gun mantlet, which is relatively thick. Everything else, however, is pretty thin. We just saw the actual armor profile, what we call its dry skin. Now, this is what it looks like when it faces off against a Tiger 1. A tank it will face a lot. Here, in this view, the green areas are the areas that are easily penned, whereas the red areas, not so easy. You can already see that the front of this tank is pretty wide open, and that is because it is very easily penned. If I look at the bottom plate here, it's only 115 millimeters. It has a slight slope, but it's still only 115 millimeters, meaning that a Tiger 1 will slice through that with pretty much ease. Jumping to the upper glacis plate, well, that jumps to 161 millimeters. Again, a Tiger 1 is going to slice through that pretty easily, but because of the sloped armor, it does increase that penetration value, that thickness, quite substantially. If I then move around to the sides where the driver's compartment, you can see it jumps to 242 millimeters. So the name of the game here is wiggle and jiggle as much as possible in this tank, because that's the only way you're going to get those auto bounces, to be honest with you. If we turn our sides to the turret cheeks are 155 millimeters. They are rounded, which is what gives it that additional thickness, but they're not great. And again, you're seeing here, if you wiggle it and jiggle it, it's going to be quite good. If you have a slightly hull down position, then you can see the upper glacis plate suddenly changes to 332 millimeters. That will bounce almost everything in tier 7. But with only 6 degrees of gun depression, it's not easy. You have to take that into account. So that's what the armor profile looks like. It's not the best, it's not the worst. You just need to be mindful of the fact, whilst it is a big, lumbering, heavy tank, it is not particularly well armored. Not frontally. Don't go out there trying to facehug in this thing. Let's have a look at the overview of the modules. This thing has a lot of ammo racks. Yeah, I've never really seen this thing ammo racked. You can see there's one on the bottom, well, there's two on the bottom, there's three in the turret, and there's just a lot of ammo racks. The engine is all in the rear, which is why it's only got a 12% chance of an engine fire. There's no engine at the front, as you can see here. So that's what the modules on this thing look like. You can see that it is pretty difficult to ammo rack it. I mean, you can if you repeatedly hit the turret over there, or you get that little shot into the side because it's got an ammo rack either side of the turret ring. But like I said, I've never really seen ISs being ammo racked that often. That's the boring stuff out of the way, you'll be happy to know. So let's have a look at a couple of replays and let's really see how the IS does perform and if there's any tricks or tips or anything like that, hints that we can give somebody to get to play the IS a little bit better. Right, here we go on Himmelsdorf in our Tier 7 Heavy, the IS. Okay, I did say in the preamble that I had a replay in the lower stock gun. Unfortunately, I don't. I lied. We are taking the dirt gun. That's why we've got a 12.2 second reload. My bad. Nothing here, so we're going to carry on pushing around. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I seem to jump out into the IS, I always seem to be bottom tier for some reason. It's always a Tier 8, Tier 7 game. But the IS, in a lot of respects, can handle itself in a Tier 8 game. You've just got to be very, very careful with it. It does struggle to the penetration in frontally on things like Tiger 1s, VKs and stuff like that. But if you aim it right, then you won't struggle to pen some of those tags. Oh, hello, Charioteer. Load the HE. Boom, 500 straight in. Now, look, I'm not going to lie to you. We're not going to be setting the world on fire here. These aren't going to be perfect masteries and stuff like that. That's not the idea of these videos. The idea of these videos is to show you what the tank is capable of doing in the average normal situation. So, if in doubt, load HE. The IS has got pretty good HE penetration for the class and the tier. Not only that, it does pretty decent damage. Okay, so if all else fails, you can load HE like you saw there. Here comes the T29, put a nice side shot into him, get a good 300 roll. It's a bit of a low roll for the standard for the HE there. For the standard ammunition, trying to get the HE to his back deck, but he's not there. Another relatively lowish roll, 333. Not to worry, the mobility of the IS is pretty nice. We can be mobile here and give this T29 a run for his money. High roll there, 500. It's all doom and gloom for this T29. I've got the drop on him, even though I've got a much longer reload. And bang, there we go. Just over 2,000 damage. It's not enough to get anything other than a third class in that scenario. We only really took on two tanks, the Charioteer and the T29. But when you go back and look at the compare and realize that the average damage per battle in this tank at the moment, according to Blitz stars, is just over 1,000. We've just doubled that, so I'm very happy with that. Not only that, well, we also did top damage, 2,090 we dished out. Considering it was a Tier 8 game, I'm again happy with that. So that's what the IS can do in certain circumstances. You can see there it doesn't really struggle to pen, pretty decent damage, and you can handle that reload time. I'm now going to show you another replay. Admittedly, it's a bit of a heartbreaker, but it goes to show the capabilities of the IS. Okay, this time we're on Desert Sands, and again, it's another supremacy battle, and again, we've got the big derpy gun. And this time we're heading towards that sea cap. Now, I feel pretty confident here. I've got two pretty decent tanks next to me to give me some cover as I go into this sea cap. Now, I want to pop around the corner and give him a bit of a hard time, but I don't. Okay, he takes some of my hit points, but that's nothing really to write home about. It's a gravedigger, he got a couple of shots into me, that's about it. We're able to contest the cap at the moment, and we're going to try and hold this line as much as possible. Here comes the gravedigger. We should be able to smack him and track him into place. There we go, 371. Not a bad roll, but now I've got a problem with this Suma coming around the corner, and he's going to give me a hard time. Now the gravedigger's going to give me another hard time. Losing a lot of hit points here. However, we are contesting the corner. I was hoping that the tanks behind me were going to give me a bit more support than they did, but, you know, you can't have everything in a game. Here comes the gravedigger, and there goes the gravedigger. That's a pretty nice roll. He's out of the game. So, we are losing this game at this moment in time, but I can now cap. I've blocked nothing, and I've only dished out 740 in damage. Remember, I'm thinking that we've got some tanks behind me, so I'm pretty okay. Put one into him. Yes, 420. That's a pretty decent roll into the cupola of the 87. Now the Soma's coming around the corner again. I want to avoid him as much as possible. Try to put one into the Suma. Yes, we get a 416 roll, and we manage to avoid the return shot. We've got to be careful, however. We are on 500 hit points. We lost a shed load earlier. So, we're going to pop round, try and get into the 18. Now, remember, the aim time on this thing is an absolute nightmare. Now, I thought I'd angled up enough here, but I hadn't. And the 87 can still smack me, which is really annoying. Now, finally, my teammate takes him down. We've done 1,500 damage. We've taken a cap. We've taken 1 kill. We've lost almost all our hit points, but we held a corner. Now, it's 3 versus 3. There's an E25 and a T49 Hornet. Plus, there's the Progetto. That's a one-shot. I can't push anything here. Not anything at all. So I've got to be very careful. I've got to protect this position. If anything comes round, I'm going to smack it as much as I possibly can. Now, I do make an error. Now, the T-34 comes around. I'm thinking, yeah, I've got some support again. This is good. There's the E-25. I load HE like a muppet, thinking I can get a good roll. 160. It's just terrible. I should have just used standard ammunition and gone straight into him. Get 1 bounce. I'm not going to bounce all of these, unfortunately. Maybe get 1 good roll into him. Yes, 173. We do 2,209 damage. We've whittled that little E25 down. It's 2 versus 2. This should be a win, and I'm going to fast forward because it is a win, to be fair. So just zipping through, you can see here the T-34 is going to take out the E25. There we go. Bang, he's gone. So we took 1 kill, we capped a base, we did 2,200 damage, we blocked 700. We get a first class for our troubles, because that is what the IS is capable of doing. Now the thing is, if we would have survived that battle, if I wouldn't have loaded HE on the E25 coming around the corner, then that could have been an ace, but it wasn't to be. We still do relatively well. We're second top damage there, 2,209, and again, we're in a tier 8 game. So don't write the IS off, okay? Just remember, the armor is not as strong as you are led to believe. It is pretty weak. That doesn't mean to say it's not a good tank, because in fairness it is. Just be gentle with it. Anyway, that has been my view of the IS, the tier 7 Soviet heavy tank, Tech Tree tank. Like I said, it's a lovely little tank, but for being a heavy, you can't really front line in it because the front is too weak. And you've got to remember that. Not only that, if you've got the derp gun, it does take a long time to load. I mean, just over 12 seconds is a long time. And you are vulnerable during that load time, especially in this tier. So you've got to be mindful of that. By all means, you know, get out there and get a shot in and find somewhere to hide. If you can hide this thing after taking the shot, good. Don't even attempt sniping in it. The dispersion is just not good enough, and the aim time and everything else is just going to hurt you, okay, sniping wise. So try not to snipe in it. It's like a second line support heavy, and you've got to play it more that way. If you front line it, okay, you can probably get away with that in a tier 6 battle, but in a tier 7, tier 8 battle, you are going to get hurt. Tier 7, you're going to come across smashers and annihilators. They are going to swipe through that front on this tank like a hot knife through butter. So remember that, guys. Just be a little bit more conservative in the IS, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. It is a fantastic tank, and a lot of people sort of diss it for the wrong reasons. Anyway, I've been Fujit. That's been the IS. Comment and everything below, because that's the whole idea of these videos. And until the next time, guys, remember, it's only a game, so stay safe out there. Have fun on the battlefield, and happy tanking. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Having fun and being happy.